Not unless like the original artist is the one tweeting it out. Fake AI tracks have been released throughout this thing. But ultimately, that's where I'm gonna leave it for today, because like literally, you've got people putting out essays about every 2 lines in this 6 minutes. Right? Entire videos dedicated to like, oh, Kendrick definitely meant this, and just saying it's connected to that. And well, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on this latest development, especially if you're fans of either or both. But for me, I feel like I'm just the real winner in this, and specifically the people that just like music and just this whole drama situation. Because I just got my popcorn out for this one, and I'm enjoying the show. And I'm sure on their side, as long as things don't get violent, they're gonna enjoy all the streams and the money that comes from this. And then it's time we talk about Netflix's Baby Reindeer problem, which if you haven't seen yet, Baby Reindeer is the 7-episode autobiographical comedy drama thriller series written by and starring comedian Richard Gadd. It is a fascinating, entertaining, horrifying watch, and since its release 3 weeks ago, the show's generated an unusual amount of drama and controversy. Because aside from some minor details and names, pretty much all the major events actually happened to Gadd, who plays himself in the show. And driving the plot are 2 crimes that he fell victim to in his 20s. First, he was relentlessly stalked for years by a woman fictionalized in the show as Martha, who's played by Jessica Gunning.
41,071 emails, 350 hours of voicemail, 744 tweets, 46 Facebook messages, 4 fake Facebook accounts, 106 pages of letters, and 1 cup of tea.
And second, he was raped by another character. And despite getting very little promotion from Netflix, Baby Reindeer climbed to the top of the most watched charts in the UK and US within a matter of days, attracting 2.6 million viewers in its first week, 13.3 million in its second week, and 22 million in its third. Those numbers increasing over 3 weeks being incredibly rare. And you've now got both Gadd and Gunning reportedly expected to get Emmy nominations. And while they're likely thrilled about this surprise success, all the attention has fueled unwanted speculation about the identities of the real people behind the characters, which has naturally led to internet detectives hunting for clues online, and some claiming they found the real Martha, though it's never officially been confirmed. Pointing to videos from Gadd's old stand-up shows where you can hear a laugh in the audience that sounds like Martha's, or digging up old tweets directed at Gadd that use the same sexual innuendo of hanging my curtains that Martha does in the show. Also, others believe that Gadd's rapist is the actor, writer, and director Sean Foley, whom they say resembles the character on the show. The big thing there is that both Gadd and Gunning have shot down speculation and discouraged viewers from trying to identify the characters, but then basically just telling fans that is not the point of the show. Right, in all his public statements, Gadd has stressed that it should be judged as a work of art and a story, not a puzzle for people to solve.
I wanted to show the nuances of the human condition, really. I wanted to show that people are a mixture of good and bad, and I think Stalker stories usually tend to be one person's good, one person's bad, and I wanted to kind of get away from that.
And saying that the things that he sought to portray weren't just how 2 specific individuals victimized him, but more so how actual stalkers suffer from mental illness, how police often don't take stalking victims, especially male ones, seriously, and how Gadd himself was complicit in his own victimization, indulging his stalker and repeatedly returning to his rapist. And so he posted on Instagram that people I love, have worked with, and admire, including Foley, have gotten unfairly caught up in speculation. And Foley himself adding police have been informed and are investigating all defamatory abuse and threatening posts against me. So now you have some people criticizing Netflix for not doing enough to prevent viewers from being able to identify the characters. With, for example, the Daily Mail writing, Gadd's claim that he has protected her identity by changing key details is baffling given that both women are Scottish, both studied law at university, both are around 20 years older than Gadd, and both used highly sexualized language in their speech and writing. Which at that point, if you're wondering, how does the Daily Mail know that? Well, they claim that the real woman who inspired Martha's character gave it an exclusive interview. And in that, she threatens to sue Netflix and Gadd for defamation, accusing him of bullying an older woman on television for fame and fortune, claiming that she's received online death threats and abuse from Richard Gadd supporters, though notably, if true, would confirm that a number of internet detectives have found the right person. But also, a big thing is she goes further to say that he, Gadd, right, is using Baby Reindeer to stalk me now, saying I'm the victim. He's written a bloody show about me. But they're also deciding to throw a petty jab at Gunning, right, the actor who plays her, saying she sort of looks like me after I put on 4 stone during lockdown, but I'm not actually unattractive, which honestly sounds exactly like something the character that Gadd wrote would say. But in the meantime, all we're seeing from all the drama, the speculation, now the legal threats, is that it's really just driven more viewers to the show, which I mean makes sense. Even me covering this is probably going to lead to a number of you watching it for the first time, which I will say on that note, if you have watched the series and you're now hearing this news, I'd love to know what you think. And then, while we're currently seeing chaos rock college campuses across the country right now, we're seeing a very different situation play out in Rhode Island, right? And that's because at Brown University, university leaders and protesters have actually had a dialogue, with the 2 sides actually reaching an agreement for the university's governing body to discuss and eventually vote for the divestment of funds from companies connected to the Israeli military. And in exchange, pro-Palestine demonstrators agreed to dismantle their encampment, as well as them agreeing to not participate in any unauthorized protest activity for the remainder of the year. And even more specifically, the agreement lays out a series of steps for the months ahead. Right, so this month, 5 students will meet with 5 members of the university's governing body to discuss their specific specific demands regarding the divestment of funds from companies connected to the Israeli military campaign in Gaza. And then by September 30th, the university's Advisory Committee on Resource Management will release its own recommendations and advice regarding divestment. And finally, in October, the university will vote on the issue, with the agreement explicitly stating that the vote will not be deferred or delayed. And this agreement also stating that no member of the Brown community, including faculty, staff, graduate students, undergraduate students, or alumni, will face retaliation for their involvement in the encampment or related activity. But with all that, I should note that the university is still holding disciplinary proceedings related to the encampment. And this is reports of harassment and discrimination will still be investigated, as they should be. And actually, to that point, as of recording, Brown is still pursuing charges against 41 students arrested in a sit-in last December. Right? And so for many, people see this as the university striking a reasonable balance between protecting free speech, listening to students, holding them accountable for rule breaking, and avoiding escalation. And that is the Brown protesters are claiming this agreement as a major victory, especially with it being the first major concession from an elite American university on this issue. And on Instagram, the Brown groups behind the protest said that the agreement would not have been possible without the hard work of university encampments across the country, whose collective power has forced university administrators to acknowledge the overwhelming support for Palestine on their campuses. And to that point, Brown isn't the only university that has actually opted to listen to what protesters are saying and have a discussion. Right, Northwestern University in Illinois, for example, they've come to an agreement with students to disband the encampment but leave one tent up until June 1st. With the school also pledging to support Palestinian faculty and students and revive its advisory committee on investment responsibility. But of course, the reason we're talking about this today is those are the exceptions to what we're generally seeing. Right? Because like we talked about yesterday, what we've mostly been seeing is as this movement grows, we're seeing confrontations, crackdowns, and now even violence. Right? Last night, nearly 300 people were arrested at Columbia University and City College of New York as police cracked down on college protests there. That including 119 protesters who were barricaded inside Columbia's Hamilton Hall. And at UCLA last night, violence broke out after counter-protesters tried to remove barricades from a pro-Palestinian encampment that the university had earlier demanded disperse. You had people throwing fireworks into the encampment, protesters being attacked and mobbed, it all playing out without police intervention for a pretty long time. Though also, with everything that we've said, despite the fact that the peaceful resolution achieved at Brown seems like a better outcome, it is still come under criticism. Where some Palestine supporters feel anything short of a full commitment to divest is a failure, while some supporters of Israel are saying deals like we see at Brown or Northwestern are just a capitulation to protesters. With, for example, the likes of Fox News anchor Harris Faulkner actually accusing Brown of negotiating with terrorists. And honestly, if I was to make an educated guess here, I think what we saw play out at Brown, I think that's very likely going to be an outlier. Everything else from a lot of these different campuses seems like it's just going to escalate and escalate. But for now, we'll have to wait and see as all these situations evolve. And then, for any of you focused on getting your business off the ground, creating a place to share your homemade goods, or even a personal blog, I got a great solution for you. And it comes from, and I want to thank the fantastic sponsor of today's show, Squarespace. Because, I've been partnering with Squarespace for years now, and I have to say, it is just so easy. There's nothing to install, patch, or update ever. And creating a beautiful website with Squarespace's Fluid Engine is so easy. You just drag things where you like, no coding necessary. And if you need a starting point, Squarespace has a bunch of great professional templates. You can even sell custom merch easily. Squarespace handles all the production and shipping. Plus, with Squarespace, you get access to all their marketing tools and analytics, and their award-winning customer care team via email or live chat 24/7. So go check it out. See why so many others love it. See why you're gonna love it, and start your free trial today over at squarespace.com/Phil. And when you realize it's for you, just make sure you enter an offer code Phil to get 10% off your first purchase. And then we've got to talk about this massive marijuana news, because the Justice Department just announced that it is recommending easing restrictions on marijuana. Though to be clear, we're not talking about federal legalization of weed or even decriminalization of weed at the federal level. Instead, it would change the classification of marijuana as a Schedule 1 drug to Schedule 3. Right, so it would leave its current category, its teammates, heroin, ecstasy, and LSD, and it would join anabolic steroids and ketamine. And while this is kind of shocking news, it also shouldn't be too surprising. Right, marijuana is easier to get than ever before in America. In fact, a majority of all Americans now live in states where they can purchase it legally. Right, 24 states have approved recreational cannabis, 38 have approved medical programs. At the federal level, we've seen the Biden administration issuing pardons and commutations for nonviolent drug offenses. Federal prosecutors have also been increasingly deprioritizing marijuana cases. Though big thing, even with the reclassification, marijuana will still be a federally controlled drug that's subject to prosecution. So if you get caught with it and you are punished for it, don't go blaming me. I'm being specific in how I'm painting this picture. But that said, there are some pretty substantial real-world impacts that could come from all this. We may see a lightening of sentencing guidelines. It may also pave the way to create legal protections for medical marijuana users who run up against federal laws on public housing or employment. Also, a big one is that this will loosen restrictions on research, facilitating scientific studies on the harms and benefits of marijuana that have long been hampered by its strict classification. And beyond that, it opens the door for doctors to eventually prescribe marijuana to patients even without FDA approval for marijuana products. But really, in general, this move will have the biggest overall impact on the marijuana business in legal states. Right? And that's because under the US tax code, businesses that sell Schedule 1 drugs, they can't deduct business expenses. Right? So companies that sell or they grow cannabis, they have much higher tax rates. But with a Schedule 3 classification, notification, those businesses would be eligible for tax breaks. And the financial effects this could have on the market would be massive.